Welcome to another edition of Listen MKE. I'm your host, LaToya Dennis. We will have a very serious discussion today. The topic is violence in our community, and more specifically, domestic violence. Since February, there has been a 100% increase in homicides and an increase in domestic violence as well. A panel of experts will join us today to discuss the nagging topic. Why are we seeing an uptick in violence against women? What can be done about it? What can men do to stop it? And we will discuss the resources available to women caught in these violent situations. Listen MKE is a collaborative project of the Journal Sentinel, WUWM, the Milwaukee Public Library, and Milwaukee PBS. Today's show will be co-moderated with James Causey, projects reporter for the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel, and 2019-2020 Marquette University O'Brien Fellow. Remember, you can submit your questions on Facebook, your questions or comments. And just so you know, we will have resources for people who may be experiencing domestic violence scrolling across the bottom of the screen. So if you see that, that's what that is. That's important to know. We have a great panel lined up today. First off, we are bringing up Carmen Pitre. She is Executive Director of the Sojourner Family Peace Center, which provides crisis housing, advocacy, and individual support to thousands of women and children. Thank you for being with us, Carmen.
Good morning, LaToya and James. It's an honor to be here with you and with your other guest.
Yeah. So we're seeing a crazy uptick in the number of domestic violence victims. What's happening?
We are seeing an increase. What I would say is we're in a crisis within a crisis. We had high rates of violence prior to the pandemic, but what the pandemic has done is created great stress and uncertainty in people's lives. And it's increased the stress and the isolation for survivors. You know, as you said, homicide rates have gone up. We've had 2 mass killings this year in Milwaukee. We noted that the homicide rate began to rise in the fall of last year, and it just has continued to rise since that time. We had Amara and her 2 young babies and murdered, and then the family of 5. So we're greatly concerned about the lethality rate of what women are dealing with here in Milwaukee. We know that COVID has created isolation. We know that victims are reluctant to come forward. They're afraid about their economic future. They don't know what they're going to do around childcare, whether or not they have a job or will have a job. And it's really forced victims into a position where they're choosing to stay or pressing pause on leaving because they're afraid to come forward. They're afraid they may get COVID. Our shelter has continued to operate. We were forced to reduce our capacity from 53 to 43 beds at the beginning of COVID, and we're constantly at 100% full, as most of the other shelters are. So it's really important for us to get the message out that there is help available and the shelter is open if you need to leave and become homeless because of the violence in your life. COVID has also forced you to stay in the one place that may not be safe for you. Home is not always a safe place for survivors if they're living in violence. As I said, we did some focus groups with survivors at the beginning of COVID, and they said they're afraid about their future, their financial future. They're afraid about their basic needs, how they're going to live and get their needs met and care for their kids. And they also report that they're extremely isolated, and it also gives the abuser more time to control all of the circumstances in your life because of COVID. Whereas before you might be going to work or church or socializing in some capacity, you no longer have those avenues for people to connect with you. We know that violence is a learned behavior. That is both the good and the bad news of this issue. And we know that it's a long-term generational issue. For instance, we see the grandkids of the grandmothers who used to live in our shelter. So we have to do more to prevent violence in the lives of people overall, but especially at this time, getting them the message that it's safe to leave, you can leave, we're here to help, it's not your fault, and you're not alone. So that's a general overview, I would say, in a few words. We're in a crisis within a crisis. And I've said, when Amara and her 2 babies were murdered, I said, we're in a state of emergency. We're well beyond that now. As of yesterday, Sojourner noted we are at 44 domestic violence related homicides. Now, not all of those are intimate partner violence. What that says to me is that people are struggling. We're all struggling. And that if you have violence as a learned behavior, you're going to turn to that in times of stress. So, we're in a crisis.
There are a number of things that I want to follow up on in that, but before I do, I think we should go ahead and introduce Natalie, Hayden, and LaVerne Badger.
Mhm.
They have a podcast called Exposed, where they have weekly conversations about healing after physical and mental abuse.
Mhm.
Ladies, thank you for being here as well. And, we just heard a bit from Carmen about what it is that we're seeing, the uptick that we're seeing. And she said something that I find to be jarring. And it's that it's a learned behavior, and that in her shelter, she sees, grandchildren of women who were once abused, right? Who are there because they're being abused. Like, how do we even start to break this cycle?
Well, we like to say that. Oh, go ahead, Carmen. I'm sorry.
I was going to say LaVerne and Natalie are two amazing examples of thriving and survivors who've gotten out of that cycle of violence. So I just wanted to say that. Sorry, LaVerne.
Thank you. That's okay. Yeah. Thank you for that. Because I am now a thriver after abuse, and was once a client of Sojourners. And so I think how we start to bring some closure to this is exposing it. Domestic abuse for victims was never spoken about. Like, it was the one thing you didn't have a neighbor to talk to, your mother to talk to, a family member to talk to, because there's multiple reasons for that. One, society shames you. There's judgment that comes around that. You beat yourself up for being in a situation that you feel like you may be the cause of. So we're saying just being able to now really talk about it and be open about our experiences and letting others know that they're not alone is huge. I will say, in the last 5 years, I have seen the most communication that I have ever seen around domestic abuse. More people are more people are, I'm sorry, I got some static going on. So more people are, hold on. Nat, do you want to kind of jump in here for me? Because I think something is going on. Okay, I'm sorry. Am I good now? Okay, sorry about that. So because there's more of us that are talking about it, survivors, there's more resources. There's never going to be enough resources because there's always that need. But being able to communicate what is going on with domestic abuse and trying to figure it out and educate those, I think that is definitely one of the best steps to ending domestic abuse.
And what I'll say to the generations of breaking the cycle, I knew for myself that my family, my aunts and my mom had experienced Sojourner at some point, and then I had my experience as well. And I said to myself that I have to break this cycle, and my daughter will be this will be the last time that she'll experience anything like this, if I can prevent it. So, the cycle it is really intentional. I know for me, and I know it's easy to get really caught up in the cycle of domestic abuse if we fail to talk about it and address it. So the initiative that LaVerne and I Expose the podcast, is that we have these conversations and we normalize having a conversation, difficult conversations at that, because domestic violence can be challenging and difficult, and it's not just intimate partner, but it can be within the family. And so when we choose to have a conversation and we say that it's okay and that we offer hope, and we're using ourselves as in being transparent in our own pain, and we're using that to inspire others, that is where I think it starts with just a conversation.
I would say, as I said, LaVerne and Natalie are amazing examples of cycle breakers who have made the break of the cycle of violence in their lives. Leaving can be hard. We do not make it easy for survivors to leave. We live in a victim blaming society, but leaving is possible, and it only takes one person to break that cycle of violence. And kids are watching us. They look at us. We're role modeling what love is like and what relationships are like. And there's some research that shows by the time kids are in third grade, they already have attitudes and beliefs that either support violence against women or is against, using violence in their relationships. So we need to role model love and healing. And I just want to say it just takes one person to begin that process of healing.
Now, there is one more person I'd like to bring in on this conversation. We have Steve Thomas. He is himself a former abuser who is now leading efforts to get male abusers to change their ways through Batter's intervention program. Steve, thank you for joining us. And so I guess I'm just going to ask you, from the perspective of men right now, we see the homicide rate up. We see, obviously, the domestic violence rate is up. What do you think is happening right now when it comes to men?
Well, let me start by thanking you for having me here. What's happening with a lot of men is they need to get engaged with some type of treatment that's going to help them unlearn those behaviors that they were taught in their male socialization, and also some type of treatment that's going to help them deal with their insecurities, issues around pride and ego, sexuality, mental health, and unresolved trauma. It's kind of interesting that now that there's a backlog of cases in there. There's a whole lot of men running around that are not receiving treatment. Usually a guy, when he's sentenced, he has to sign up for a batter's intervention program right there in the courthouse. Well, that's not really happening now because a lot of court cases are on hold. And so you have these people out here roaming the streets with no type of treatment, no type of education on how to learn their behaviors and become productive members in relationships.
And so, from your perspective, is that something that can be learned?
Sure, it can be learned. 18 years ago, I was a court-ordered participant in the Nevermore program, and having a background in law enforcement and corrections, there was my male socialization, but there was also the socialization around violence of having to survive in certain situations. And so it really amazed me at one point when I was rehabilitated, and it took a couple of things. It took dealing with my mental health issues, bipolar, treating bipolar with alcohol and drugs, issues around sexuality. And so it was really interesting. One of my very first visits with the psychotherapist said, your secrets are going to keep you sick, and that's what you need to deal with. And so when we started doing that along with AODA and the Batter's Intervention Treatment Program, there was change, and it's good to say that change is it's ongoing. It's a lifetime journey. It's not something that happens in 23 sessions, but it's definitely something that can be relearned. And we call our business rehabilitating men's behaviors. Okay. And there are a lot of success stories that go along with that. But first, a person has to realize that they have some issues around violence and what it means to be a man and manhood. So when they realize that and open their minds, then they can receive the help. Once again, it's a little deeper than just batter's treatment. There are a couple of supporting components that go along with it, that need to go along with it, so that we can see the change.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I should say that if you're watching this broadcast, you likely see things that are scrolling across the bottom of the screen. Just so you know, those are places where people can get help if they need them. So there are resources like the Sojourner Family Peace Center and others that are listed there. Now, this question is for anyone. I'm wondering, for women or men, because men can be in domestic violence relationships where domestic violence is present as well. What is something that they should be looking for? Before that first slap or punch or whatever it is happens, are there signs?
I do think there are signs, and I think the signs are quite obvious. I think people, see the signs long before they get too deep into the relationship. It's just something that they hope they can change or hope that the person will change. But, issues around control, where you can go, who you can talk to, what time you got to be home, constant calls at work during the day, or if you're at home, those are all signs that there's a bigger problem there.
Mhm.
And those are the signs that, like I say, to the average person, you probably saw them a long time ago. And don't get me wrong, I mean, it is hard even sometimes when you recognize the signs to get away from a controlling person, because the last thing that a controlling person wants to do is lose control. They can go through any means possible to maintain that control.
Mhm. I would say an obsession with you, extreme jealousy, extreme reactions, telling you what you can wear, as Steve said, where you can go, when you can go there, controlling different aspects of your life so that your universe gets smaller and smaller and smaller over time. And we live in a culture that really is confused around that. We paint that picture as if it's love in relationships. If you're not allowed to have healthy boundaries, someone is extremely jealous. Survivors have said, well, I thought that that's what love was, or that was, our love language. And it really is about control, as Steve said.
I can hear it. I can hear people saying, because I've heard this before, like, we're just so in love. We only want to be around each other. He doesn't want me to go out, or she doesn't want me to go out with any of my other friends, right? It's me all the time. And you're saying even something like that can be a sign that.
Yeah.
I think when all of us might want to do that for a weekend, right? When we both fall in love and we're connected, it's not to say that energy is wrong, but if it lasts over or for an extended period of time or becomes a behavior in the relationship, I would say that that's definitely a warning sign. Or if it moves too quickly, as I've heard Natalie say in recent conversations, too quickly, too fast.
I would piggyback off of.
Go right ahead.
I would piggyback off of what both are saying, and when we talk to younger people, teenagers, specifically teen girls, it's not as obvious. And I think what happens is when we start to date, when young people start to date, and you get those butterflies, and you want a person to like you, that guy to like you, and yes, those little subtle signs come up, which seem like really big red flags when you're in the moment. So when I say subtle, it's like, babe, when you get home, can you make sure you text me and let me know? Or I just want to make sure that you get home safe. Let me know who you're going to go hang out with so that I can make sure that you get home safely. Or I don't want you to be influenced by the wrong person because I have your best interest in mind. So when you have it and it's confronted and rolled out to you in a way that's almost romantic, that this person is thinking of me in this way, that you allow yourself to accept it. And before, your body definitely tells you that something might be a little off when it starts to happen more often and when it gets a little bit more aggressive. But what we had found out speaking to young people is that they don't even see it as as being abuse. It's just somebody who is attentive enough and want to be able to show their love towards the other person. Those are the kind of signs that we want to make sure that they understand can lead into that. The biggest sign is just to trust your instincts. Abusers don't show up at the door as these monsters. They're beautiful, they're handsome, they're charismatic. They can hold, people love them. They have great personalities to others. Other people outside of the home may absolutely love them. So they're not always these monsters that if you saw them coming down some dark alley, you'd be like, that is not the guy I want to be with. It's those more subtle things that we want to make sure that are bringing to your forefront of your, of making sure that when you're dating someone, that is this healthy? And that's where the educational piece comes in.
Now, I want to bring in my co-moderator for this discussion, James Causey.
Hi, this is a great discussion. I think we all have a personal domestic violence story. I remember when I'm going back to 1976. I remember it specifically. One of my first babysitters, or a woman who used to keep me, she was beaten by her husband often with belts and all kinds of things like that. And my father would often step in, and other family members would step in, and then she would always say she was going to leave him. She would always say she was going to leave him, but she never did. And I noticed how the support for her started to fade over time, and so she felt like she was alone. And it's probably one of the reasons I never got into drinking and everything, because this guy was very nice. The abuser was very nice until he started drinking, and then once he started drinking, you could see the abuse starting. He was a guy that probably would have never checked into any kind of resources to help him dealing with his anger issues. So, and she was the type of person that didn't want to involve police in her business as well. And we see this happen today, like the rap star Megan Thee Stallion, who was shot by this guy named Tory Lanez. Even after she was shot by this guy, she admitted that she didn't want to tell the police that this guy had a gun in the car because she was worried about his safety and police doing something to him when they arrived at the scene. So I think women are caught in this battle of how much do you reveal, how much do you tell, because they still look out for the abuser. Can you talk a little bit about that?
I would say that you're right, James. We've created this complicated doorway for survivors to walk through, and we need to look for other options for survivors besides just engaging with law enforcement. We need community doors open. We need to work with healthcare, schools, churches. We need to open other avenues, because the choice should not be between your own safety and the safety of someone who's hurting you. And it is a very real choice for women of color to have to make, to call law enforcement when someone's threatening your life, versus not, because you're afraid that they're going to also be killed or hurt. So I don't think that that's a choice that they should have to make. And we need other avenues of help, and we need to explore that and open up those doorways. But as Steve said, we don't have a lot of ways that abusers have been able to come forward. We haven't really opened those avenues. But I just want to affirm that that is a very difficult choice for survivors to make.
I agree with Carmen as well. And you can correct me if, Carmen, I believe that law enforcement has that ability now to be able to make those decisions where a victim on the scene, they have realized, does not always make that decision. And the reason being is for fear of something happening to their abuser, and also fear of that will make things worse once he gets out.
Right. For me, it's a reflection of all the opportunities we miss in life to intervene in families that are experiencing violence. For instance, what if we had doorways in healthcare settings where you could get a real intervention and step through it for some help for everybody in the family? Like, for instance, when a child is born, if we had an automatic conversation in every healthcare setting that would talk to the family about wellness and everybody's wellness, and the ways that you might get hurt and wounded, and the ways that you might need to heal in order to prepare to be a parent. That's a much different conversation than when you call law enforcement because someone is hurting you. So it's really, for me, a failure on our part to open up doors that really could shift the conversation from reactive to more wellness. And we know that parents want to show up for their kids. We just have to figure out how to have that positive focused conversation.
Well, Carmen, that brings up this question of finances and how much money do we incorporate into this very important topic, an issue that's impacting our community. There's not enough money going into this. That's obvious. But how do we advocate and make sure that enough money is going into these issues?
I think we need all of our leaders to be talking and thinking about this issue. They need to be creating policy. They need to be looking at funding streams. And for me, it's about opening up additional funding streams for services that need to be supported. We know our culturally specific programs have come forward in the We Are Here Milwaukee campaign to say that they are underfunded. I support them getting additional funding. Sojourner has to raise over $3 million privately just to keep our shelter and our restraining order and our other services afloat. All of our nonprofits, all of our organizations should be funded at a level that is needed. So I think we need additional funding, certainly across the state for all programs.
Do you see the discussions happening at all to make that a possibility? Like, are we getting closer?
I think the Milwaukee We Are Here effort is spurring those conversations at a county, city, and a statewide level. I'll certainly be sending a letter to the governor supporting their request. We need much more funding for everybody to maintain and to create new services. So we're in an epidemic that really requires that we expand services, and we're not in a position to be able to do that because of the uncertainty of COVID. As I said, just to maintain at Sojourner, we were seeing almost 12,000 clients in 2019. We had 90,000 contacts with those people who were seeking services. That's just scratching the surface. And that's not to say we need all of the organizations healthy and vibrant and thriving throughout the neighborhoods. That's the other thing we need to do, is do more neighborhood-based services for people. So those are just my thoughts. Natalie, LaVerne, Steve.
I think
and we keep asking for money, and we keep saying that, people are being quoted to these programs, and nobody's giving the funding to help run these programs. And anytime you have to run 6-7 groups a week on $49,000 a year, somebody's going to get left out. Our policy at Community Advocates and the Milwaukee Women's Center is any man that comes to our door seeking services, and they're not already in the court system and not already on probation, they receive free services. Now, a lot of people don't take advantage of that, but if they did, it would be, how are we going to pay the people to serve them? Because once again, there's no money. And this is the gripe that goes on and on and on. We could keep complaining about it, but we usually just put our boots on and keep marching because it falls on deaf ears.
The other thing about services is, we need more than just dealing with the crisis. We need healing-focused care for everybody in the family, for men, women, and kids. And that's a long-term endeavor. It's one thing to get out of the crisis, get into shelter, get your basic needs help met, and then get into services. But long-term quality of life depends on how you're able to heal those things in your life. And that's really what's underfunded. And we don't have a lot of avenues for helping men who are abused as well.
That's a good segue, Carmen, because we were just about to jump into that topic of, a lot of times when we think of domestic violence, we think of women being abused. But men can be abused and are abused as well. Like, what do you guys see when it comes to men?
Well, there are hardly any services for men. A lot of times the police reports are not written up as a domestic violence. It's written up as something totally different. Also, being part of the LGBTQ community, we definitely are totally ignored. And it's kind of interesting when you work in this field, you hear so much, and we know that there are more men killing women than women killing men, but it's sometimes kind of hard because our population, my population, is not recognized as far as the services they need. Where does a gay man go to get treatment if he is being abused? A lot of places are not offering it. I mean, we do the best we can to meet the needs, but I mean, it's like a Band-Aid because the resources are not there.
So we started sheltering men in January of this year. Sojourner Truth House opened to male survivors, and we have sheltered 8 men to date. It took us a little while to plan to expand that service, but we've always been available to help men throughout our other programs, but we just opened shelter. I'm very happy about that. And we have had men who have stayed with us, and it's been a great service to provide to men who've been in same-sex relationships as well as men who were abused by women.
I just want to add to that too. Community Advocates has the Family Support Center, who also serves men now. So there has been some growth taking place.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting, Steve, that you mentioned that. Do you have a percentage of how many men are abused? I'm sure that they don't come forward as much because we know women don't come forward as much. So Do you have any idea of how many men face abuse in relationships like this?
Because men don't come forward, we really don't know what the numbers are. I can say we probably, out of 400 men a year, we probably serve 4 or 5 men that will come forward and say they are being abused. So, I mean, the numbers are hard to predict because once again, people just don't feel comfortable coming forward.
Yeah, about 10%.
You know, it seems
About 10% of
I'm-
clients are male victims. Sorry, LaToya.
I'm sorry. I'm glad that we're talking about the male perspective because what happens is the physical part of domestic abuse is what is mostly focused on. There's more of a higher percentage of men that are being abused, but it's more mental and emotional abuse. And that gets swept under the rug, whether it's happening to women, but definitely men. Men are somehow, and I'm intrigued on how we gather information to support men in the way that we have over the years figured out how to support women. One, there has to be, the stigma has to go away that a male has to endure what a woman gives him because he's a man. Like he should be able to handle that punch, that slap, or that verbal lashing that she may give him because he's a man. And society and other men do not give them permission to be vulnerable that way. So we have to figure out that way. And I'm all for it and support of how we move forward to make sure that men understand that we support them as well, but also having other men support them and not make them feel bad or weak or less than a man if they're going through this.
Do you guys know if there are any sorts of like support groups for men who are abused or anything like that?
We offer a support group for men who are abused, whether it's a heterosexual relationship or a homosexual relationship. Yeah, we offer the services.
I know LaVerne and I have been around in the last couple years, and what we've seen is increase in conversations around men in the community. I know for one, G's Clippers have had these conversations at the barbershop, and it's just phenomenal to see the healing and the transformation that comes along with that. It's a start of a conversation, and then it can spiral into other things. So I just think the conversation is the seed, and then we see where it goes from there.
Now, I'm so glad you mentioned healing, Natalie, because I think a lot of that needs to happen. I'm wondering, where do I guess we as a society start as well as individuals? Like it seems like there's a lot of healing that needs to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. I mean, through transparency is where healing happens. And before one can begin the healing process, you have to be honest and real with yourself. And, let's just be honest. For men, that can be really challenging to be vulnerable if there's no space created for that. Like LaVerne said, there's so many societal expectations from our men, and then especially Black men, that there's a wall up. And so there's more leeway for a woman to become vulnerable and get that healing versus a man. So we want to make sure, I know Expose the Podcast, we have a focus on including, it's an inclusive conversation, because our healing as a woman is wrapped up in our men. So we need to make sure that that's happening.
I have a question. How involved is MPS in this whole talk about abuse? I mean, is it something that's incorporated into the school curriculum where they talk to young people about, proper relationships and the impact of abuse, or have we at all?
So MPS has been a strong partner of the Family Peace Center. We have a social worker co-located here at the Family Peace Center. They've been involved in our Breaking the Cycle effort, which is about focusing on kids and trauma and the long-term impacts of experiencing or witnessing violence for children. I know that they have done an exceptional job with helping families who might need to navigate school choices. Their social workers are extensively trained on the issue, and I do think we've done some collaborative sessions with them with young people throughout the years. But I don't know if it's a mandated K through 12 issue in the curriculum through DPI.
Should it be?
It
Yeah.
absolutely should be. It absolutely should
Absolutely.
be. I think it's a start. Natalie and I hosted a teen event a couple years ago in February. I think it's Teen Dating Violence Awareness Month. And what we found is that it seems to be more impactful when there's peer-to-peer conversations. And being able to see and have conversations, to watch teens have conversations to say, oh my God, this is stupid. Why would you do this? Or, oh my God, that's their business, versus having an adult come in and say, you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do that. If we have the conversation and we include them in what's going on with them and have them talk through with our guidance, of course, because we come with the experience, to say what the solution would be, and making sure that if you see something, to do something or say something in regards to your peers being exposed to DV, I think that's going to help as well. Being able to sit in a classroom and have someone kind of just lecture them almost, I don't know that is always the best way, but we definitely believe that the peer-to-peer conversations seem to work really, really well. And we, and some of our future endeavors is to be able to start putting out seminars and trainings of getting students, girls and boys, together. And that specific event that we had a couple years ago, it was probably more boys than it was girls, and they were extremely talkative, and which was surprising because boys are usually the ones who are super quiet and don't really say anything, and girls are the opposite. But they were sharing their experiences in regards to how girls have stalked them on Facebook. Let's not talk about social media abuse and how girls are following them. Girls don't know how to let go when they stop dating. So not only are they harassing and abusing them, they're harassing and abusing the new girlfriend of somebody who they are dating. So I think, yes, if we can figure out with MPS and Sojourner and other agencies on how we can improve on how we have this discussion with teenagers, I think it's gonna change. It will help change a lot because we're getting them a lot sooner.
I just want to jump in here to remind people that you are watching Listen MKE. It's a collaborative project of the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel, WUWM, the Milwaukee Public Library, and Milwaukee PBS. And we are hearing from some experts here on the topic of domestic violence, which is unfortunately on the rise here in Milwaukee.
I also think teens need to be connected to someone in their life who can hold space for them, where they can be honest. When we ask kids, we've done programming and we've said to them, what's your goal for this week? Some of them have said, I just want to talk to my mom. I want to be able to talk to my mom, or I want to be able to talk to my dad. And so as parents and adults, we need to be approachable. We need to heal ourselves so we can show up as fuller human beings for our young people. And healing ourselves is directly related to helping our kids be protective in the world, right, and navigating the world. And far too often, we don't get the healing we need, and we pass on that hurt and harm to our children, and they live it out for long periods of time. But kids really need and want to be connected to someone that they know, and a caring adult. And a caring adult can be a very big protective factor in the life of a child who's experiencing adversity. And for me, it gets back to love. How am I loving the people in my life? How am I loving myself and creating space for people to talk about the ways that they have been hurt, or the concerns that they have about the relationships they're in?
I wonder how helpful would it be for a person who is in a domestic violence situation where there are children involved who, for whatever reason, can't leave or isn't ready to leave, for those children, even just to say to them, hey, this isn't what love should look like, and it's not what love should feel like.
Right. I think that's an important message, because leaving isn't always an option right away. We have a brochure called Children, Family Violence and Trauma that gives a number of tips for people around children and trauma, and we'd be willing to mail this out to anybody who wants it. But I think just saying to a child, this is not your fault. This is not about you. You didn't cause it. You can't fix it. And let the child know and help them plan for safety, right? What are you wanting your kids to do if an episode happens or breaks out? I think those are good messages. I don't know what LaVerne and Natalie would say around your experiences with your children.
I know for myself, my healing was definitely, I mean, as much as I do protect my daughter, I know that in order for her to be protected, I had to put myself at the front of the line. And for some people, it may look very selfish or seem very selfish. When women or anyone that's fleeing a situation, sometimes you have to use whatever you can to get out. And sometimes it's your children, or you may have to think of yourself. And I thought if I was not around, then I would not be able to protect my daughter from the cycle of abuse. So I took it very personal, and I made a personal initiative to ensure that my healing was in order. And so I attribute a lot of that healing to Sojourner, because at the time of my residence there, it was some long months, but there was programming specifically for healing for my daughter as well as myself. And so I challenge, or I invite many people to, especially women with children, to make an initiative to heal yourself, because when you're whole, you can actually listen and hear your kids. When you're fighting and combating and you just don't have the mental capacity to do so, your children are not being heard. So that's really necessary.
And I'll piggyback off that as well. I have adult children. So the spectrum, so they have come to me, and I can see the effects of them being raised for 13 years. I was in that abusive relationship, and I can see now that they're adults, and they have actually told me some of the things that bothered them, that they wanted me to do that I didn't do. Specifically, one of my daughters was, I just felt like you should have left. And I did leave, but she felt like I should have left and stayed. She doesn't necessarily understand the hold and the fear that you have, and the lack of confidence and the lack of support that holds you in that abusive relationship. And so I still have to work through that with her. That's something that she feels like she may not have needed to experience if I had been stronger. And I hold that guilt with me, that I stayed longer and what I should have, could have done. But I honestly, she's not the only one a child who has grown up in that type of environment. She's not the only one that feels that way. Now, I will say kudos to Sojourner, is because they definitely have expanded and have learned over the years. I was a client of Sojourner 20 plus years ago. And the resources and the things that they have available to women and their children, and how they take pride and how the services of dealing with the trauma and dealing with the mental health issues that come along with that is huge. Mm-hmm. And so I believe that Natalie's child and experience will be definitely less than what my kids experienced, because they had a Sojourner. She had a Sojourner to help her through that, her as the mom and also her as the child. That's a huge difference when you can have that support and have access to those resources. 20 plus years ago, there was shelter, but it wasn't necessarily about trying to figure out the behind the scenes trauma of what kids are, how kids are going to be affected. It was about shelter and getting you safe and possibly getting you some housing. And as a option, you can get some counseling, you know, but now we're in a much, much better space. And I think kids have the abilities to overcome some of this trauma with what we have today.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this being Domestic Violence Month, and I think we should mention that. I think our society, including Hollywood, has done a poor job of talking about domestic violence. Actually, it seems like the movies that get the most press is the movie where the woman is fighting back. The woman gets even, she beats the man up. We've seen some Tyler Perry movies like that where the woman, was abused in a relationship, and when the guy ended up hurt or paralyzed from the waist down, she abused him, and people applauded that. Can you talk about abusing a person who abused you and how that just does not work?
I think when we talk about, for me, I know my healing was not revenge in a sense. And I know that's not the case for everyone, but when you find love within yourself, and I attribute some of that, that focus to the support and the resources that I received at Sojourner, there's a focus on yourself and your healing. When you realize that there is a connection between your child and the abuser and their history, you see the bigger picture. And the bigger picture is that we're all connected. And I don't want Carmen, I don't want Nevermore, I don't want James Causey, I don't want anyone to hurt. So the opposite of that abuse is love. So I had to replace it with something. And it may take people, especially someone that is fresh out of a DV situation, to get to that point. But as for me, it was necessary right away to think of the best interest of the child and to put love before anything else. And that required me to first love myself.
I will say that it was the opposite for me. I've been married 16 years to a nonviolent, caring, loving husband who's never once ever in any way, shape, or form abused me. But because I had come from an abusive relationship, physically and mentally, the wall was up that I would never let anybody talk to me anyway. I would never let anybody handle me. So I felt like I now needed to be in control, to be able to control what I was gonna get in a relationship meant that I was trying to control that person. So we were dating. I'll never forget when we were dating and I was raising my voice and we were arguing, and he was like, wait a minute, why are you talking to me like that? So he had to stop me and say, LaVerne, basically I'm not him. And then he said, I'm not going to tolerate this. And so essentially we ended up going to counseling for that. And it was more for myself to say, because I really didn't think that that's what I was doing. I thought we were just having an argument, and that's kind of how you argued. And that's kind of what trickled into my new relationship, that he didn't deserve that, but he was able to vocalize it to say, that's not what we're going to do in this relationship. And so I was able to get tools on how to recognize, one, how to communicate effectively. We can argue, but there's a way to argue. And two, to understand where that was coming from me. And the last thing I wanted to do is make him feel like I had felt for 13 years. And it almost stopped immediately. Now, there's still some things that I'll be like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have said that way. And or I'll think about what I'm going to say before I speak. And I'm still human, so there's things that still kind of spill out. But I'm not above apologizing for it. And if it's really something that bothers him, we talk about it.
I think violence begets violence. And I've heard lots of survivors say, I still care about the person. I want the violence to stop. I think it's more, I wish we had more time to talk about healing trauma. Trauma and going through events and being exposed to violence really embeds itself in your nervous system, in your physical biology, and you need time and space and help to unravel that so you can show up in the ways that LaVerne described. So you see the people in your life as different from what happened to you. But I think, we would not recommend that people fight back that way. I mean, if you're in a life-threatening situation, then you need to call for help. That's a time where I would say law enforcement is critical and necessary. And then get some help for trying to get out of the situation, and knowing that leaving may take a while. But, I do think that violence begets more violence, and that it ultimately hurts us if we use it as a strategy in our lives and relationships.
This hasn't been nearly enough time to take on this topic, but it's what we have, right? And I think that every bit helps. I think it's important that with this conversation, we leave people with resources, right? So I want to ask all of you, are there any sorts of resources that you'd like to put out there just to let people know they're there for anyone
I want to throw
seeking
this out
help?
there. We do the Batterers Intervention Program, we do parenting programs, and we do healthy relationship programs, okay? We're really lucky, and a lot of guys are coming through now. They're court ordered to all three, so it only enhances the BIP piece, because believe me, if he's hitting a woman, he's probably hitting a child too. But you don't have to be court ordered. These services are absolutely free. If you take the parenting program, there are additional supports that come from Milwaukee County as far as child support, job placement, job training, all of the services that community advocates offer. We also do individual counseling. We have a licensed counselor, and we also counsel men who are trying to find themselves. In other words, they've been closeted for so long and in a heterosexual relationship, and we try to help them find themselves if that's what they need. So those are some of the things we offer free of charge.
I know Expose the Podcast, we are a podcast where we speak on life after abuse and everything in between. So it's simply just a conversation, and oftentimes you'll hear LaVerne in our conversations, and we talk about, we're just really transparent about our experiences, and we've had some experts in on the show, but you can check out our website at exposethepodcast.com on life after abuse.
And I would say Sojourner FamilyPeaceCenter.org, certainly go to our website, but there's also a number of culturally specific organizations, the Usha Project, the Mug American Women's Association, Latino Research Center. All of the websites have been scrolling down at the bottom. I would say most importantly, look for someone in your life that you trust, that you feel that you can speak up to or speak out to begin to build that bridge to healing for yourself. Look for someone. And to those of us in the community, we need to be that someone, right? Who's approachable, who believes people when they come forward, and basically says, it's not your fault, you're not alone, and I'm here to help you.
And on that note, I think we do want to leave it with a sentiment from, or a question actually, from someone who's been tuning in via Facebook. The question is, what do you say to friends and family who are emotionally exhausted from continuing to hear their loved ones' stories of abuse that they have yet to leave, and they've yet to leave the situation? How can they be supportive while protecting their own mental health?
Can I say that if you don't have the emotional capacity, I say step aside and let someone else take the mantle, because I know there were many times when I was in my situation, and I'm sure that there was someone that wanted to give up, or they just couldn't give anymore. They couldn't hear anymore. They couldn't take in anymore because it was just so weighted. Thank goodness there were people that said, you know what, I can't deal with this because, this is just too heavy for me. And someone else stepped in. And maybe you don't have an additional person, but I think you do more harm when you are mentally spent and it's just so much that's going on. So I'll just say, if you can't handle it, step aside and let someone else take the mantle.
On our website, we have a brochure, 10 things you can do to support survivors in your life. I think number one is believe them. But I think for family members, I think it's important to acknowledge how hard it is to hold space for someone who's hurting or being hurt by someone else. So I think acknowledging that it's difficult, as Natalie said, step aside if you need a break, but get some support for yourself so that you can show up and hold space for the person who's hurt in a way that's helpful, right? We never want to push people to make choices. We want to hold space for them to make choices that are appropriate for them, but acknowledge that it's really hard to see somebody you care about and love being hurt, and get some help, either a therapist, a friend, a pastor, someone to talk with you about how painful that is.
With that, I think we'll close this conversation that we will come back to, because unfortunately, this is not going away. So I want to thank everyone for participating in this conversation. And is something that we will continue. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.